how to deal with and live through troubled times. You know, there was a song by, I think it was Timothy. Oh, I forgot his last name. Timothy. What was his name? Timothy. Oh, great gospel writer. Timothy, Pastor Timothy. I can't remember his name.
Right.
Timothy Wright. Thank you. That's right. It was Timothy Wright. Thank you. He wrote "Trouble Don't Last Always." But many people, sometimes we can find ourselves when troubles do hit us, we end up in many instances nowhere near where we should be in our, as it were, our faith. So today I just want to talk about some very practical ways we can remember that you are going to live through troubled times, because you're also living through good times. And I don't mean the sitcom from the 70s. You're always going to see troubled times. You're always going to see life developing in ways that would be preferred by you and then not preferred by you. And quite frankly, it's going to be a very well set up balance of both. But many times we can sort of kind of get stuck when the times are difficult, i.e., a diagnosis that is debilitating of body, or a diagnosis in our finances that requires a great deal of help. We made bad choices, we made bad decisions, we made bad investments. They've not rendered or yielded back for us those things that are good and healthy. Bad times, troubled times, maybe in our marriages. Maybe you never know what you've done. Your selections, the choices that you've made. Maybe in the job that you've taken, you've elected, you've selected, maybe in accepting an ordination for ministry that you thought was really cool at first, but now that you got into it, you're not really sure you're cut out for that. Maybe in just in general, choosing the neighborhood you live in, or the any given choice you can make. Tough times come. Maybe someone else that's near to you is going through something and you're bearing burden for them. And today I've been dealing all night with four families of transitioned within the last 48 hours. And so there's a lot of conversations. We got mechanical failures going on in lives. Cars are breaking down at very crucial times. People are contracting this pandemic's product, as it were. And I dare call it a product, but it is something that's produced with this virus, and people are getting diagnosis, and we're helping and seeing people dealing with diagnosis for cancer, just diagnosis. Not that the prognoses don't look good, but they can be troubling and sometimes difficult times. I always say this, and I mean this from my soul, that death is as much a part of life as living is. And we don't oftentimes take that seriously. But today we want to make sure that we take death seriously, but we don't put it into the balance of life. We don't realize that in many cases, we don't consciously remember that there is in all things, there's a time, there's a season for every purpose under the heaven. There is a time for everything. There's a time to live, and there is a time to die. And we're still talking about life. There's a time to be born. There's a time to die, right? There's a time to plant. There's a time to pluck up that which is planted, because apparently we're plucking it up because it's no longer producing, right? And you got to reset. And troubled times are not always bad. Many people don't realize that troubled times would reference and sometimes give us a natural ecological manipulative and demonstration, which we would look at as storms. Storms in your life are troubling. Storms in your life can, in fact, come in and make it very difficult for you, right? Many of you are in nor'easters right now, okay? And you are dealing with snow and the prospect of more snow coming. I know in my region of the world, we are dealing with the prospects consistently of hurricanes. They are the equivalent of nor'easters and storms that come in, and they are troublesome. You you got to get under covers and wrap up when it's ice cold, and you got to make sure you got chains on your tires when you're trying to get out, because the job must continue and you have been given a expectation to meet. And until the job or the school or the government says there's a state of emergency, everybody's still got to go to work, right? And if you have to go to a physical location, you're going to need to have the trouble of putting on the tires for the snow or the tires for the inclement weather. And then you have to trouble yourself to get out there and handle those things, but you're still living. You're still in the process of life. Perspective is a very big thing when it comes to events that present themselves to us. Another topical and very popular quote, one I prescribe to, is that life is 10% of what's been presented me, and then 90% of how I respond to it, as to whether I'll be successful or not in the presentations that are life. Moderators, please. And so with that being said and that being understood, we want to make it our business to put ourselves in the mindset of the kingdom when it comes to life. Now, one of the first things we want to sort of back ourselves up into is the ideal of trouble. So if you'll allow me in a very modest way to, reverse engineer this subject that seems so simple. This is a very simple subject, Apostle, but yet we find it's not. So I want to run quickly to one passage in the book of John. I think it's John chapter 14. If you all will give me the pleasure and the humor and the humor me by going there. John chapter 14. John chapter 14, verse number 1. All of you've heard, every one of you have heard this at probably every funeral you've ever been at. I purposefully try not to use it because it's so overused and improperly used at funerals. But we've purposed it to mean something important. But it says, let not your heart be troubled. Yeshua said, verse 1, John 14:1, you believe in Elohim? Believe also in me. In my Father's house, Yahweh's house, there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you so. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, you may be also. But verse number 1 is the real emphasis of this talk. Don't let your heart be troubled just because you're living through troubled times. Again, the earth is the primary example for us and its ecosystem and its maintaining through that ecosystem, which was designed by Elohim. If you believe in Elohim, believe also in me. Well, when he says believe also in me, he is saying believe also in the word of Elohim, because that's who he is. He is the Son of Man, whose flesh is wrapped around the Son of Elohim, which this same author, John Yochanan, tells us in chapter 1 is the word of Elohim. So Messiah being the word that became flesh. If you believe in Elohim, believe also in me. What's inside of me, the word of Elohim that created you and me and all that therein dwells in this world, we must occupy. Believe in my word. The reason for that is very significant, because If we reverse engineer here, backing up from John 1:1, believing in Elohim, if you believe in Elohim, let not your heart be troubled. If you believe in Elohim, believe also in me, right? Let's go back to Genesis chapter 1. Let's go back to where it all begins. Let's go back to where everything in life starts. When Yahweh gave in Genesis chapters 1, 2, and 3, if we know the storyline well enough, Yahweh created the heavens and the earth and all that therein dwells. And then he gave man a job. And man's job was to till the ground, pay attention to, give special service to all that already existed. And that was an actual job. A job, though beneficial, though a sustaining, building entity and mechanism and manipulative, is still, in fact, troubling. Because you got to actually do something. And how many of you know that you don't always feel like moving, but you do have to, watch this, you got to move to live. Sometimes it's troublesome to get out of the way of something that's invading a place you set camp up in. Please take the analogy to bear. And so often enough times, when we get settled in a place and we don't really build our resting place with the environment and the atmosphere in mind, we will settle in feeling pretty good, borderline entitled. And if we don't seem to know of the problems, we will, really lock in and put our foundation there. Now, because it's sunny many of the days and it's warm most of the time, if we don't know about how often the seasons change in that area, or how often the driving winds come, or how often the driving rains come, or how often the driving frozen rain called snow comes, we will think it very inconvenient for the earth that I was, designed to till to, force me. It's troublesome to have to find, flannel and long johns or wetsuits and protective gear, and have to put up a very, very strong structure rather than just allowing for the wind to blow through my tent or my teepee. And in fact, I need to now in a troublesome way put in as we've grown in technology, some funny. I just had a conversation with someone this morning, putting in something that controls my air because it might be cold or it might be warm outside, and the space I'm going to reside in, I have to have it at a 72 degree, as it were, average temperature. But when it drops below 32, I could lose my life because I'll freeze. If it's above 97, I could stroke out. If I'm exposed to that without any shade, it can be troublesome. Life has troubles in it that are already stitched that you're dealing with, but there is something that exasperates that when you have, with those normal circumstances, something else we don't really pay attention to and understand, and that is the transitioning of a human life that is dear to us and near to us. That is something that will leave us heavy in heart. And sometimes heavy in heart can place us into a state of longing, and we call it grief, which would, if not properly understood, we won't know how to mourn. And mourning is not a process that is designed to bring us into depression or into many other psychological disconnects from the world we live in, because we don't want to leave the image of what has left us. And sometimes it's troublesome to have to start over. But that's just life, because life is full of change. And so when you deal with changes, change is always going to come. You have, again, the four seasons. You have, it's troublesome because of change, to have to find a way to light your home when it becomes dark. It becomes troublesome that when you have to find shade for when it becomes light. And that's just with natural lighting and natural darkness due to the design of day and night. It's troublesome to keep a balance between the two. So, living through troubled times is a very normal thing. And unfortunately, as a counselor myself for both spiritual and some form of clinical, we happen to see people who don't and or have not been informed that change is inevitable. We find that people don't realize that as I grow older, my taste buds change. When I was a child, I enjoyed cotton candy like crazy. I enjoyed Baby Ruths, still do. I enjoyed those little caramel Mary Janes. I enjoyed the little orange candied slices, the little, rubbery candy slices, the goldfishies. You understood and you enjoyed sweets. Probably really unhealthily now in retrospect, but you could sustain it and deal with it when you were younger. But as you got older, your palate went from things that just caught your attention and smelled good to now change into things that are good for your body. I know that when I was a little younger, some years back, I loved to eat because my metabolism was very high. I didn't realize, I didn't realize my body was doing work for me automatically. But once your body goes through certain phases, you have to make very strong intentions to keep up that which is necessary for good health. So it's troublesome to now have to get up and go to the gym. It's troublesome to now have to always make sure I'm reading labels on what I'm consuming. It's troublesome to make sure that I have certain, as it were, vitamins, testosterone, the certain levels and right levels of estrogen, the right levels of zinc, and right levels of calcium and hydration, making it's troublesome to keep my body in an alkaline state, but it is life and you live through them. So just like the things we over exemplify, we overemphasize when it comes to the painful things of our hearts. Again, I don't wish pain or hurt on anyone when it comes to things like death, loss of job, a hurricane or tornado snatching things that you've known all your life away from you. All the different types of calamities we see exasperated in the media of the negativity. All that negativity is necessary for the appreciation of positivity. All that negativity, those troubled times, are necessary for making sure you work in a little bit of inconvenience to make sure that the negative reputation can be used for positive representation. And so when we think about these particular ways of life and don't get ourselves caught up in the loss as much, but look at the loss the way Yahweh intended it. Let me give you an example, and then I'll push into some passages of the writ. When we talk about a forest, you know that the forest is what you and I were placed here as humans. If we go back and reverse engineer, we were created with one job, that was to till the ground. So the forest is supposed to be essential to the human's existence. I mean, like right after Elohim creating us for his praise and glory, right after that comes till the ground, take care of the earth. And we've not done that so much because we became so entitled in our own goals and aspirations. But back to the forest, which we're supposed to be tilling, if you pay attention to horticulture and forestry and understand arbor working, you will see that when a tree is in a forest, there's an ecosystem for that tree, and that tree is a part of an ecosystem. Squirrels, rabbits, raccoons, owls, pigeons, eagles, doves, spiders, creeping things, beasts of the field, if we can be just general, and the human being. Um, all things are thriving in that vein. All things are necessary in that vein, but all things phase out to change. So the tree, when it's first being planted, it comes into what we call a whip. Once it becomes a whip, and I need you to realize that, once it becomes a whip, it then spans up and grows up into a decent size sapling. And then that sapling then turns into a tree. That tree turns into a staple in that particular forest. And it may be for years, tens of years, maybe even some cases we've heard hundreds of years. But watch this. In that environment, that tree phases each time. Each time it phases, something different in that ecosystem eats from it. Now, for the tree, it's growing up and it's getting bark. Some of the bark is in one phase a certain way for a certain type of consumption and or protection, but then it phases into other forms and the way its bark works, and that's hydration and it's fertilization and it's what's in the tree and now what the tree stands for. And birds can nest in its feathers and under its leaves and on its branches and burrow into its core. Can squirrels or woodpeckers or things of that nature, and it can become a home as well. But here's the thing: once that tree finally is extracted, its time is expired. It falls down in that very same forest, and it now begins to serve the forest differently. It becomes compost. It becomes fertilization for all the other little trees that maybe its seeds dropped and have created. It becomes fertilization for all the other ground cover that's down there, and for the grub that needs to also have something to consume, because everything is consumable in the forest and it consumes itself in certain phases and stations in time. So I want us to really take a new look at how we view trouble. One, trouble don't last always. Two, trouble comes to cause you tranquility. Trouble comes in many ways to cause you ease, because you learn from trouble if you pay attention to why the trouble came. And in the learning from trouble, you now know how to ward against this and prepare against this type of an event again. You see, our bodies are also the same way. For us, if we go to the gym, trouble for our muscles and our sinew says, hey, this is weighty. And in the efforts to lift it, it can exasperate the muscle and tear the muscle up, which is always a bit inconvenient. If you've ever worked out and you've had the soreness after the workout, that's trouble, but you're still living. You're still able to move. You may have restricted range for a period of time, but your body is registering the weight you lifted that caused this distress and this exasperation. And then your brain, the way Yahweh made you, begins to now acclimate towards what's needed to make sure that your muscles can lift that weight again easier the next time. So every piece of trouble comes to make you strong. Every storm comes to make you more secure. Now you have to also live through those storms. Yes, you do. And the way you live through any storm, the way you live through any troubled time, is to always make sure when trouble comes. The Bible declares that we are quick to give thanks when we have good things happen to us, right? And sometimes we're so deep that we don't know how to even realize we are selfish, because we expect good. I've learned to expect trouble. Matter of fact, I'm looking for trouble. Not the kind of trouble that makes you whatever, but trouble helps you to expose, even when it's inconvenient for you, the very things that could kill you because you've taken life for granted. So dealing with troubled times means we have to be thankful when Yahweh brings trouble our way. And usually Yahweh's teaching a lesson in all trouble or inconvenience that comes our way. Yeah, because if he wanted you dead, the trouble doesn't kill you. The trouble has the ability to literally cause you a quality of life deficiency in your quality of life based on how you handle the trouble coming. If you take it for granted and don't think it can hurt you, unfortunately, many people are doing that in this pandemic. That's a trouble. And you don't think it can hurt you because you have the blessings of Yahweh. He is my healer. You still have to get sick first. And then Yahweh can heal you. But why get sick if there is a way around the trouble coming? And because of your knowledge of the trouble, you know how to prevent the trouble from impacting you negatively. And though it may pass over you, you now know what to do the next time this type of trouble comes. So I make this plug. This pandemic is trouble. You don't have to deal with it quite as debilitating of a way as many are encountering. Just put a mask on your face. Now you'll learn from this to know how to deal with the next time someone tells you an epidemic or a pandemic or a virus is very active and debilitating your region. And you learn how to be wiser about it. You learn different protective measures. You learn how to find those things that are not something you gotta, make in a hurry. You will have some stuff sitting in store. So when it happens, like you have for flashlights, like you have for batteries, like you have for bottled water or water reservoirs, you've prepared because you know that at any given time you could be out of those items. That's why we have, in many instances, food with shelf life. We have perishable, non-perishable items because we know that any given time we could be without. And if a storm comes through and kills the very things that we actually love to eat, such as our cattle and our livestock, and or our farming, we have non-perishable items that can actually hold for a period of time. So you prepare for storms. You prepare for storms. So when trouble comes, we have to learn to give Yahweh thanks in all things. This is deep because it's the will of Elohim to them who are in the practice of obeying the word of Elohim. In all things give thanks, for this is the will of Elohim concerning us who are in Yeshua HaMashiach. So living through troubled times, we could preach all kinds of messages around it, but even the messages we preach would be a topical application if we did not understand the internal mandate to shift how you think. You have to keep yourself in a posture that says trouble is going to come. Yahweh, I acknowledge you in my way through trouble. See, I like the story of David. David was minding his own business. David didn't expect to come through Jesse and his mother in what they found to be a state of sin. He was just a little spermatozoa floating around in his father's loins, a soul in the eternal of Elohim. And like any soul, you expect to come in through proper legal channels. Unfortunately, like me, we came in through, what would be considered today unlawful, inappropriate, sinful ways. Though the very act in a legal environment is a blessing. The act outside of that legal environment doesn't mean any less that the person will be a blessing, but it's displeasing. So David did not expect to come in and have to be treated like he was treated. David was minding his own business. He was cool. He acclimated to his circumstances. He realized that he was going to be treated this way by his family. He embraced whatever daddy told him to do. He went out there, did the lesser jobs, the more dirty jobs, and he embraced it to the point where he mastered it and became stellar at it. And he did not know that he would be anointed to be king. That was an external application of a actual element that was needed, and Yahweh saw him fit to do. Now, it doesn't change who he was, but it used what he was to do something needed for the community. But he was still who he was by calling and by purpose of fivefold ministry. Now, so when David is minding his own business, he's drug away from a task his dad asked him to do. Now, I want to help y'all with this because we're going to talk about living through troubled times. You can't get a better storyline than King David. There are those that are equal and really unparalleled with that, but none greater than David. No, not even Yeshua. Yeshua's purpose is more impacting, but the storyline of how to live naturally in this world through troubled times, and you really didn't know you was going to have troubled times. See, Yeshua knew he was going to have troubled times. He came to go through trouble. David had no idea. He was just a human born in earth, minding his own business, trying to be a boy, growing up in the world. And well, he's treated a certain way. Well, he embraces it. Troubled times. Because Jesse's sons, they worked, they did what was standard in the community, but they were not considered, a dirty little secret, and they were not constantly hid. They were more than likely, brandished, and they were more than likely touted. They were more than likely celebrated publicly. Now, the family may have privately celebrated David, but not quite the way they would the older and middle and youngest sons of the marriage. So David is back here quite content with what he does. It's always the harder, the lesser, the more tedious of the jobs no one really wants to do. But since we got the little runt in the family, we'll just give the runt the jobs. He's glad he's here. And my job as a man, Jesse would say, is to take care of my son. But we do need these things done, and it works best for the public view of what we are, because we are a family of prominence in our region. And it'll look like he's a servant to the oncomer and the stranger, and only for those who really know, they will not know that David is, my son. So David takes those jobs of shepherding, and he's always gone. Have you ever thought about this story this way? Just pay attention. It's really deep. So when David is embracing what he is, he doesn't know that this is an issue, but he is cool because this is life. And he doesn't lose his cool. He doesn't break down. He doesn't cry. He doesn't moan. He doesn't groan about it. He simply embraces it and does it. And so while David is out there, Yahweh sees this man's young boy's faithfulness. He's full of his father's instructions. Doesn't matter how he got here to him. Doesn't matter his station in life, because he's just wherever he's at, in all things giving thanks. Wow. What a testimony. Matter of fact, it's funny because it's the will of Elohim for all of us, that in all things, the good things, the bad things, the indifferent things, the everything, just give Yahweh thanks. The car broke down, give him thanks. The AC broke down, give him thanks. A loved one transitioned, give him thanks, because even in that transition, there will be fertilizing for the ground that still exists to benefit even greater than the actual element that transitioned could be here in this phase, because you're transitioning yourself. And that transition and that wisdom and that fertilizing of that element, that beloved loved one, Their words, their involvement, their teachings will now resound in your head greater because you took them more than likely for granted. Not that you didn't love them, not that you didn't appreciate them, but there are things we've always taken for granted about people who are in our presence every day because they're in our presence every day, right? And you just take for granted, I want to see them. Just like you take for granted when you sit in a chair, it's going to hold you up. So you keep eating and eating and eating, not realizing that there may be a weight capacity. And as you get older, you learn if the after a chair breaks, and I've had one or two break on me, yeah, I need to make sure I stay thin. I need to make sure I stay healthy, right? And so um, as we grow, David is like he's really content with where he's at. He doesn't even know he's who we know him to be because we have the story of his record. For some of us who were growing up poor, I grew up in the projects. I grew up in the ghetto. I never knew I was poor. I knew the ghetto, but when you grow up in it, you don't know what it is because it's your reality, and you make do in your reality. You keep moving in your reality. You're looking for ways up. Sometimes I think it may be better to grow up at the bottom, beating everything out of the soil to develop whatever you need for your soul. And so you can literally toil towards a higher level of life and quality of life later because you see everything from the ground up. So sometimes if you take the right mindset and you take the right attitude, once you have embraced where you are, you can elevate out of it just by being who you are. David was that person. I really resonate with David. He was that person. He just lived. When good happened, when bad happened. So he didn't even know he was living in an unlawful, quote unquote, bad situation. He didn't even realize that his functions were based on a trouble of life and they were more inconvenient than those of his brothers before him. He didn't realize that him being out there in the wilderness and what have you was troublesome. But he just lived through it. He embraced trouble and he learned how to defend against the elements that were out there. He learned how to defend against the lion and the bobcat. He learned how to defend against the bear and the rattlesnake and the python. He learned how to prevail against the Komodo dragon, and whatever else would lay prey on his responsibilities. Trouble just don't last always. If you know how to get through it and you're patient with it and don't ruminate and be upset. Why I always got to be out here? They don't never have to come out here and do the work. They ain't never got to come out here. Sometimes they come and help me, but nobody ever does it. I'm the one that's always got to do it. No, he doesn't do that. He doesn't ruminate. He doesn't go over the board with having a problem with doing it. He just embraces it. He gets it. He does it. He's yet living. Then some great thing happens, which he doesn't understand. He is drug away from his responsibilities, which he had just nestled into. And someone says, come up here to meet this man. Come see a man who is saying Yahweh is speaking to our family. David didn't even take a bath. I mean, he came out, they brought him right out of the shepherd field. They brought him right out of the field, right from rubbing up with the wool infested sheep. I said that wool infested sheep because that's what they had, right? And he's rubbing on them and he's, I'm sure, musty. And he didn't he didn't even get a chance to take a bath and be then, in fact, they just poured oil on the guy. Like, I don't know if that's cool, but maybe my bouginess doesn't allow me to really embrace that fully, because for me to put oil on, I'm locking in hydration. I need to get this dirt off me first, right? I gotta, yeah, come on, y'all know what I'm talking about. You go, at least let me get into the sauna. Let me jump into the well or something, a spring of water or a tub of water or something. And let's get the dirt off me and then lock in the hydration. Oil me down then. Let me be perfumed, because, you can't put perfume on funk, right? BO, right? Let me shower. Let me put on a new garment, then oil me up, right? None of that happens. He's just drug in out of his environment and oiled down. And then he's told, you're going to be a king. Okay. I have only seen one king, and what he's doing apparently is pretty cool because everybody talks about him and long live our king. So I serve at the I serve at the pleasure of my king. And so, okay, that's a good thing, right? And now for 20 years, it doesn't happen. And then David then starts to get asked to come to see the king because David, living through troubled times, always learned how to make a song in the night. He learned how to pluck his banjo and his harp in the dark to keep him and his soul comforted that he is alone dealing with the beasts of the field and the flocks of his father, and sometimes tolerated by his brothers. So now David, he's told he's going to be a king, and now he's being invited to the king's place because somebody who was actually in an area camped out while David was shepherding away from his father's house, taking the shepherds into the fields. And while he was out there, someone, unbeknownst to David, over the little ledge, because he didn't want to scare David's flock, because he knew he was a countryman and he knew he could startle the sheep. He just rested over there in the trees and the brush. David didn't know he was there, but while David played songs to put him to sleep and to glorify Elohim, that man's soul was being comforted, unaware of David. So David just living through troubled times, giving Yahweh praise and thanks for the fact that I got food, I got water, I got troubles, I got to fight sometimes, but I also can rest in this beautiful sky and see your hand of glory. See, troubled times can help you see nature's beauty. Troubled times makes you stop and think when you lose a loved one, makes you stop and think when your electricity goes off, makes you stop and think when you are being evicted, makes you stop and think when you lost your job, who is your real provider and what you really need to live with in earth to make it beyond what you had fathomed in your mind was appropriate because of the way you were nurtured in a particular culture. So troubled times, David learned to live through. He didn't know why daddy didn't want him at the house, and the brothers preferred he be out because mama was like, that ain't my child. That's your child. The less he's here around my boys, the better and happier I am. So Jesse's got to make a decision and a call and a choice. Responsible though he is, a need to be met. Why pay any shepherd to come and do it? We got to run. Who will go and do it? And David doesn't even know that he's a product of not being wanted. But because of who Yahweh is, he made him needed by the very nation he was brought into. See, I had to realize that though I may not have been wanted by some, I was needed by others. Troubled times means though you've been driven out by some things, and though you've been forced out and you've been talked about and you've been lied on, and though sometimes transitions in your life of people you've depended on are so that Yahweh can show you now that they were not your source. They were just a tool from me for you, so the time would come you could now in turn be what they were. Troubled times. Troubled times means I don't quite know how to make it because I relied on this that now no longer exists, or this which is now antiquated and no longer available. How do I live through troubled times? I love what David did in his troubled times. And at this time, he didn't even know he was having troubled times. He's just singing praise unto Yahweh. Oh, the innocency of youthfulness. And he's playing his harp unto Yahweh. I'm sure he's got his conga and his little whatever he's patting on for cadence, and maybe it's his heart bass and his harp, and whatever, and he's just playing, and someone else listening to this boy give thanks and praise to Elohim under a star-struck night, quietly sits, unbeknownst to the composer, listening and being comforted in his own soul, because maybe he's running from something. Maybe he's running from one kingdom to another kingdom. Maybe he's a spy and he knows that they're looking for him, and he knows that his scent has been left and they're tracking him. But what he needs to do is get away, and he's always thinking, what do I do next? And suddenly he runs up on this place he didn't expect to hear such tranquil, calming sounds. See, sometimes when you're going through trouble, Yahweh is using you based on how you respond to help others you don't even know are watching you.
Amen.
Living through troubled times. They're something we need to begin to embrace more instead of run from. Just before I finish David's story, I interject here and go now into Matthew, and you've heard me teach the truth behind storm, that oftentimes when storms come, you don't want the storm to end. You want Yahweh to show you how to endure the storm, because the storm is going to tear up everything that's not stable in your life. The trouble is going to bring an exposure to every cinch in your armor, every chink, kink in your armor, every knot in your rope, every failed facade in your structure of residency that you have to fix. It will expose the issues that could harm you. Trouble don't come to kill you. Trouble and difficulties oftentimes comes to strengthen you. And when you pray for Yahweh to stop the storm, you're asking for Yahweh to stop helping you see what you need. Living through troubled times. It's not just the title of the room, it's the actual instruction. You can't stop living because I'm in trouble. You can't stop living because this is troubling. You can't stop living because this is discomforting. This is discomfiting. This is disconcerting. I'm confused. Yahweh is not the author of confusion. If you acknowledge him in all your way, he will direct your path. It's hard living up without my wife. It's hard living without my husband. It's hard living without my children. It's hard living without my mother, my father, my favorite auntie. It's hard dealing with my brothers and my sisters who don't see things the way I see things and are fussing and struggling over the smallest of things. And I don't do that. It's troubling. I don't know what to do. Then just pay attention to give Yahweh thanks and live through it. Just do what you need to do always. Never, ever respond to life coming to you without filtering your option of response through the word of Elohim. Who? David is an interesting element. He tells us frequently, and he tells us always, he says, thy word, Yahweh, I've had to learn to hide in my heart so I wouldn't sin against you. And we think that was because he was king. No, it wasn't there he learned that lesson. He learned that lesson after he was rejected from the very office Yahweh said he would hold. So let's go back to David. When David begins to play in the night and under the stars, sky, and the sheep are bellowing over while he's watching from the place of the pasture he's prepared for them. And he's on the watch out for coyote and for bear and for predator. Unaware of a human, he's playing, and sounds of Elohim are going. When this passerby, months later, brings up King David, or bring up David's name again, it's to the king that David has been anointed and oiled down to replace, but never met. So while he is the king of Israel is going through his own troubles, vexation of spirit. See, sometimes you got to understand, listen, y'all, the Bible says because Saul would disobey Elohim, you don't see it as often in the text as you should. But the reason that Yahweh was the one who sent evil spirits to vex Saul's mind. Now you're going to think this is really weird, but even in that, when Yahweh sends an evil spirit, he is usually sending it to help you. He sent it. Oh, let me help you, because just like Job, Satan had considered Job, but Yahweh recommended Job. Trouble, when it comes, is going to help to bring you tranquility if you give him praise through it. Yahweh sent evil spirits to trouble Saul's mind, to the point where Saul's mind was so troubled, his responsibility as king was in jeopardy, and his counsel around him tried to figure out ways to ease his vexation. And so if Yahweh sent it, he's trying to point out something. So what does Yahweh do when he sends evil and spirits to vex Saul's mind? Because Saul, one, is probably not obeying Elohim as he should. But what Yahweh does is to reveal to Israel the thing that Samuel and Jesse's sons know, is that David is the next to be king. He's anointed to be king, and he is yet to be introduced to Israel. He's been yet to be introduced to Saul, because Samuel was not telling Saul that Yahweh already picked his replacement, but yet he wanted to introduce, watch this, David to the kingship before he would ever become king 20 some odd years later. See, sometimes your troubles, not sometimes, all times, your troubles are forming you into greater. And Yahweh will never, as we say so ignorantly in the church, ignorantly in this world, and I say ignorantly because there's so much more power in this statement than we've given it, he will never give you more than you can bear. Saul was vexed. This man who had the same form of vexation in his spirit, who sat on the cusp of David's encampment, listening to David play music, unbeknownst to David, he then, when he comes to King Saul, he goes back, whatever position he holds, someone says, who knows anything that can be done to fix King Saul's situation, because long live the king, all hail the king. We are going to be in trouble if the king can't think, he can't get no sleep, and if he's not thinking, he's not making right decisions. So this man says, you know what? Hey, I remember coming through as a merchant one night and slipping back into town. It was really late night, but I was vexed, and I heard this young boy playing this harp, and he calmed all my soul. I know whose son he is, because I often go by whenever I can and sit around and just listen to him. When I'm vexed, would the king be pleased to hear him? And his staff said, yes, bring him. Let's, like, whatever we got to do, bring something that's going to help him. And the moment David showed up, because Yahweh vexed Saul's spirit, David was now introduced to the office he would occupy. Unbeknownst to him, he's innocent. And he begins to play for his king. I serve at the pleasure of my king. And he plays, he plucks, he comforts the trouble. Now, this is inconvenient, because you got to realize that they don't work the way we work today. So there is no real probability that David got paid to come and play. Now, I'm not telling you musicians to play for free for your church. I am not. But when the king, because your church is not a kingdom, but when the king asked for a subject in his kingdom to come and utilize his given talent for the benefit of the king, that was the payment. The payment was to see the king pleased and happy and unburdened in mind so he could lead the nation, because if the king is straight, the nation's going to be straight. So David is troubled and inconvenienced to leave his father's home to go and serve at the behest of the king. For this, watch this, y'all, for this cutting edge treatment of a condition our king has. This new age treatment, this hopeful treatment. Fortunately, it worked. But David is living through all these conveniences and he's just doing what he loves to do. And that's because he's kept his mind stayed on Elohim, because it was Elohim who was a father to him in the wilderness, though he had a physical father. His physical father left him at a young age out in the fields. That's why he had so much strength in Yahweh, my Elohim, my father. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. He cries this later on because Saul now calls on David frequently to play for him. Now, the benefit, of course, is that he is still responsible for his father's responsibilities, but given a sabbatical from dad's work. But he does come to work again for the king, and he's fed at the king's table, and he begins to develop a relationship with his son, and they begin to become best of friends. They love each other to life eternal. And at the end of the day, David is still living through his troubles. Understand this. David is now being basically put into the system. And while he is up at the king's house, granted, luxuriating to some degree, but he benefits from having him and Jonathan become friends. But he's serving the king. Whenever the king is screaming and running all around the house and demons are vexing him, he's being David just, it's a trouble. When the king trips, I gotta go. When the king screams, I gotta go. When they call for the psalmist, I gotta go. When they call for the harpist, I gotta go. When they call for the timbrel, I gotta go. They want the tambourine, I gotta go. That's inconvenient. That's living through troubled times. See, we don't look at these stories in the right way all the time. And so David's ability to serve, actually, at that young age, let me give you a revelation. David's ability to serve at that young age is how, in fact, he got all other nations around him to serve his idea of building the temple when he got older. 30 years later, 35 years later, when David starts collecting for the temple build, because of his troubled times when he was younger, it manifested into his provision times for that vision. These are things we have to look at. So living through troubled times, man, you got to give thanks in all things. David didn't complain. He complained when you heard him say in Psalms 42, when he just cried out, Eloi, Eloi, my God, my Father, why have you done this to me? What did I do? I've done nothing. I just came into the earth, and then you made me a king, and they won't receive me as king. And then the king that you want me to replace wants me dead. Mind you, now I went and taught everybody in his army how to fight and be men of valor. David's lifetime was always him serving someone else. And it's funny because when you serve certain people, when you serve people in general, they always take for granted the gift that is you. And though you're okay serving and you learn how to acclimate to all the nuances of serving, people still take it for granted. challenge you, you're like, well, here's what I'm doing. I'm sure King Saul was like, well, what key you play? Well, okay, these are the keys I play in, and this is how it sounds. He's never played an instrument in his life, but what key you in? Well, King, I'm in G. I'm in key of you, King. Key of you, King. I'm in the key of King. And well, put in the key of the guardsman. I don't know what that means, but he's like, okay, well, this is my gift. This is what they call me to do, sir. I don't know what else to give you. Whatever you want, I'll work on it. That's troubled times. David, listen to the story of David. Now, David also is challenged by the very person he's been brought to help. And he then expands his aid because there are certain skill sets that David has that you just can't train. David knew how to fight, and so when he was sent back home to go back, when Saul felt like this medication was working, y'all don't know that's the story. When he went up to the king, he was before the fight in Goliath, and so he is giving this new age medication, this harp playing and singing of adoration to Yahweh to calm the vexation and the mental psychological break that's going on with Saul. And David's a psychologist, technically, or at best a medication, a psychotropic drug, unbeknownst to him. And so when he's sent back home to his fathers, because they think that the treatment has worked for King Saul, David is down there, and then Daddy says, "Oh, go back because we're in war. Send your brothers some bread and convene again." Why I got to be the one to go up here and serve them bread? And because can't we get a messenger to do that? We got carriers. They had carriers back then. It wasn't quite FedEx, but they had carriers. David was always troubled and inconvenienced. And that's why I know when Yahweh sees you are a servant who lives through troubled times, the way you serve Yahweh, he will cause others to serve you. But we got to be very careful because we sometimes think we're servants. We really do. And truth be told, we're entitled servants, which doesn't make us an accurate servant. We're a wannabe servant because we feel entitled that if I serve, you should serve me too. Or if I serve, you should do this too. Or if I do this, you should do that. That's not the case. We're different. That's a different build. But living through troubled times, like David did, he goes back up. He actually fights Goliath. He kills Goliath. He kills a problem in Jerusalem. Saul is so happy. Woo! Wonderful. There are things that are done for him. But now David is more inside of the king's house than he was when he was younger. And at dinner, the king throws a gavel, a spear at him to kill him because he's liked more than the king, or it's perceived he's liked more than the king. One instance says that the evil spirits that vexed him caused him to throw this spear at David as to stop him from playing. One other time it is because of jealousy that he in fact is lauded by the people more so than the king himself, and he's got his insecurity issues. But David is living, y'all, in troubled times. He is serving the nation that he is a part of and from and born into, to the glory of Elohim, because of a skill set Yahweh gave him. And then he takes that skill set and trains the people in the kingdom how to do what he did to kill Goliath. So now they became the best slings, marksmen that they could be. They became the best bow artists. They became the best strategizers. David was a man of valor, and he served to the pleasure of his king, but as if he served unto Yahweh our Elohim. And then he is thrust out. He did everything right for the king and the kingdom. And now he's being taken away from that place, from that space. And he finds himself now, after warring for many years on behalf of Israel and King Saul, who he also is playing psychologist for while he is playing chief of the guard. Did y'all get that? And then his patient starts to try and kill him. And all these things are so significant to us. And he is sitting here, and he is now a wanted man in all of the lands Israel has fought against and won. The Philistines want David dead. They know he's the general of the might of the military. The Girgasites and Jebusites want him dead. The Edomites want him dead. The Midianites want him dead, because when they went to battle, David was the leader on the battlefield. King Saul was who he served, and he always gave homage to King Saul, but he was the one that the armies followed, even the priests. Even the priests. That's deep, because most people don't know that the priests were not just going out carrying the ark. Whenever they would say, hey, are the Levites coming? Or is the ark going before us in this battle? That meant that Levi believed in this battle, and the Levites were basically martial artists, if that's what you want to equate that to be today. Them was some bad boys. Y'all stop trying and testing your pastors like they can't fight. The Levites, whenever the Levites fought, oh, Israel was like, yes, because these boys defended the tabernacle against enemies foreign and domestic. Because the tabernacle was where you dropped off your tithing and your offering. It was the richest place. It was technically more eventual, more wealthy than the bank. So Levi defended it. They were the police. So everybody, I just want to make sure you get a chance to understand this, that when you're living through troubled times, David is now being kicked out by his king. So he's being kicked out by his king, and while he's being kicked out by his king, he comes into this situation that where he's being kicked out to, he's got to walk in caves at night. He can only come out at night because the daytime, the other nations around Israel that he's warred against and fought against want him dead. So he's number one fugitive of Israel, and he's number one fugitive and wanted dead or alive in all the nations around him. So David has to live through troubled times for well over a decade. Did y'all know that? He was in caves. That's how he had the 600 men in what we call the cave of Adullam. David has lived and done and been in so many areas and places. Moderators, please. So many places that he's had to live in trouble most of this time. That's huge. But he kept living. And one night he cried, Eloi, Eloi, my God, why have you forsaken me? What did I do? You put this oil on me. I didn't do anything to King Saul. I served my king. I served my king well. I served my nation. I served my nation well. And now he's thrown me out, my only safe haven, because the nations I helped him defeat to get us where we are, they want me dead. So I got to walk in ravines and caverns all day long, and then wait for nightfall to travel into any place to possibly get hunting done or food or grain or whatever. So your word has become a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my pathway. Living through troubled times. What David did wonderfully, maybe once I see, when he complained to Elohim during that process before he actually took the throne. Now that brought a whole nother set of troubles. But remember what David does. He does what we were always told to do. In all things, give Yahweh thanks. Every now and then you're going to complain. But living through troubled times, the only way you can really ever do that is by remembering who Elohim is. Troubles come to bring you tranquility. Troubles come to strengthen you later. Your body is a great example of it again when you work out. You exhaust it so your body can become stronger and help you process and never fail to that weight again. Storms come, and if you build with the storm in mind, you'll build a very secure place that the storm will blow over. Now, if you build on the sand in a hurricane-driven land, you're going to have a problem. But if you build on a rock that is higher than I, you're going to be foundationalized forever. These things are true. They're essential. They're helpful. Many of us are living with loss of loved ones, transition of loved ones. It wasn't COVID. It wasn't cancer. It wasn't the drive-by. It wasn't the terrorist attack. It wasn't the war. It is appointed unto man once to die. After it's appointed, there's an appointment for man once to die. After death, then you have the judgment, but the appointment is set by Yahweh. All of us have the ability to transition out of this body and meet the Father, absent from body, present with the Most High. We can all leave in our sleep. But storms are elements that Yahweh himself sends. Troubles are elements that Yahweh allows for each of us to deal with. You will never be given a storm or a trouble you are not capable of bearing, so that you can exercise and get repetitions with it, so you'll be stronger in the actual charge you're going to be responsible for later. David didn't know that his service and loyalty when he was a child would cause others to be equally and rightly loyal to him when he became the actual king. After you've done the will of Elohim, you're going to have need of patience. But he that shall come will come, and he will not tarry. He'll perform everything he's promised, and his promises are yea and amen. So when you and I are going through troubled times, death, diagnosis of terminal situations, or financial collapse, Yahweh is the one who specialized in bankruptcy. See, sometimes bankruptcy over a period of time, if you keep living right, Yahweh will cause in a jubilee movement for you to be totally restored, everything you lost 7, 10, 12 years ago. And you might not think, but if you stay faithful to him in those troubled times, when your name is being ridiculed, when your credit score is dropping, when they're calling you uninvestable, when they're telling you you're not worthy of it, they're not going to keep putting good money after bad, and you did your best you could do, but you stay faithful. You don't go out there and try to steal, and play shenanigans to get by any means necessary resources that Yahweh is saying, just wait on me. Just sit still and know that I am Yahweh. Living through troubled times is just that. Live. Don't stop living. Keep moving. Pastor Mike, shalom to you, my dear brother. How are you, man?
Blessed Apostle. It's a pleasure to be here. I am enjoying this word. I'm in a 21-day fast, and I'm just praying, and I'll just let the pop on. And you're feeding my spirit. I appreciate you.
Yahweh be praised. Did you want to share anything with us while you got us for a few?
Let me tune in just a little bit more so I can make sure I stay with the flow, in your flow.
Yahweh be praised. Yahweh be praised. We'll do so. We will be wrapping up shortly, but we will have now time for our moderators to let us know what cue we have. If there's anyone who has at this point, now that the monologue is pretty much over, I want you to remember this, Zion. Troubles, Timothy Wright, don't last always, right? But even beyond that church song, the stories in the testaments of the writ do declare and record that when you are going through anything, watch this, the will of Elohim is not for you to break down and cry and throw a hissy fit, a temper tantrum, or become a Tasmanian devil who feels you're justified in lashing out and expressing yourself with a howl that comes from the core of your being to make everybody in the world know that you're in pain. Troubled times are designed to show you how strong you are. And then Yahweh says, if you'll acknowledge that this trouble is a burden that I'm saying I want you to practice with, you'll ask me to come and be your burden bearer. And then you will, watch this, come unto me, all you that are labored and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I will relieve that burden from you. See, trouble comes to help you rebuild. I told you before, the ecosystem, the storms in life come to clean the atmosphere. Now, if you took it upon your entitled self to live in a region that is prone to storms, those storms existed before you or humanity ever got on the planet. They are designed to maintenance the planet. You can't pray for Yahweh to stop the storm. Who? What? Yes, you got to hunker down like the bird. You got to hunker down like the duck. Tuck your neck into your shoulder blades and let that water drive on you, that wind drive on you, but keep your head bowed down, hunker down. And when the breeze is gone, when the rain has ceased, when the lightning has stopped, you'll see the forest has been given a haircut and a manicure. And now you see fruit better. Now he has cut down trees that you didn't know needed to be cut down. And then you can use those trees to build back better. See, inside of every storm that comes in your life, there's always going to be debris that becomes a tool for you. And sometimes Yahweh unearths things when he blows through, because he's moving, watch this, on your behalf. Don't look at troubles and say, Yahweh, stop. Look at troubles and say, Yahweh, open mine eyes. Hey, Kabashe. Are y'all getting that? You got to live.
Yes, sir.
You got to live through troubled times. You got to live. Y'all don't hear me. You got to live through troubled times. You don't stop and sit down and say, I just can't no more. Remember, he'll never give you more than you can bear. It may not have been what you preferred, but it will be what you need. And if you pay attention to the fact that Yahweh always, 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 listen, in order for Messiah to be who he is today, he had to endure the cross. Now, the difference in Messiah and David and you and me is that Messiah knew he came to bear all that burden for us. So we would be able to, though we didn't know, bear the burdens that would come upon us. And like Messiah, it was the Adonai in him that kept him on the cross. Because if you think about it, the flesh suit of our Messiah, the Jesus part, not the Word of God, not the Son of God part, but the Jesus, the Yeshua part, went to the garden and in his feelings said to Elohim, who sent him there to die, he decided to tell the teacher, I think you wrong. I think you got this twisted. These people ain't worth me dying for. They don't want to listen. Is there a clause in this contract I have with you? Is there a clause in this covenant I have with you to do this job? You sent me to die. I know that you don't get down with the sacrifices of bulls and of goats and of turtle doves, for there's always a remembrance of sin. But this body you prepared me. The body is now speaking and saying, they don't understand the sacrifice I gotta make. They don't understand the troubles I'm about to go through. They don't understand the punching in the face, the ripping out of my beard, the stabbing me in my back, the cutting off of my skin, the nailing me to the cross, the hydration I'm gonna have to endure. They don't understand the sacrifice I'm about to make, and they keep calling me everything but who you made me to be. Why should I die for them right now? I don't feel like dying for them right now. Whenever Elohim gives us troubles, once Messiah goes through this trouble, he shows us how to live in troubled times. In that garden, Messiah was like, hey, I ain't feeling this right now. I really ain't feeling. I'm not feeling like this. They don't appreciate the sacrifice. I don't feel like it. But when Messiah goes through carrying out all that trouble, he lives through that trouble. Look at what he does when he lives through the trouble. Once he finally settles on the fact that, okay, Yahweh, I'm supposed to do this. I get it. You're not going to tell me to stop. There is no clause out. This is what you want. You prepared this body for me. Let me get out of my feelings, not as I will, but as thy will be done. Okay. And he then lives through his troubled times. Oh, help me, Ruach, my soul. I just got to chill up my spine. He lived through his troubled times. He didn't back away from it. He just kept pushing towards the mark of the prize of the higher calling of the word of Elohim that was inside of him. He knew he had to get to that cross. His body was in shock, bleeding out, beaten up. He was in complete medical shock. And yet, the Roman guard, after his beating, after his bludgeon that he took, Isaiah 53's prophecy manifesting, and it pleased Yahweh to see him do it. When he got to Golgotha's hill, he had someone help him carry the wood up the hill. And then when he got there, it wasn't the Roman guard that put him on the cross. He got on the cross himself. He lived through his difficult times. He lived to obey the will of Elohim in that matter. Your troubled times, the loss of a loved one, that's troubling. But give Yahweh thanks, because it was their appointed time to go. That's deep. That's hard when we're a little bit selfish, like, well, I want them here with me. Yeah, well, you know, Yahweh's plan prevails over ours all day, and it's appointed unto man once to die. The devil can't kill nobody. I say it again, the devil can't kill anybody. No man leaves this planet until Yahweh says so. So if Yahweh said for them to leave, and what if they're born again? I should be rejoicing, not this crazy church rejoicing thing that I've been seeing going on all over the planet. You run up and down and knocking over the pulpit, the casket at the top of an altar area, and shouting all over it. Not that. You rejoice that they finished their course. You rejoice that they got into glory before you do. You rejoice as if it was happening to you, and it gives you something to look for, that, Father, I'm going to persevere in my life as I remember theirs. I'm going to continue to press in my life as I can recall them pressing, and I saw them in their failures. I saw them in their repentance. I saw them in their efforts to be right when everybody and people turned on them, and they themselves put themselves in bad situations, some self-inflicted issues and wounds too. But if I can remember rightly, they did what they did, and now I know what to do and what not to do. That person's life speaks louder to you when they're gone than it does while they're alive, because we take them for granted while they're alive. Troubles come to make you strong. Now, I didn't say go looking for trouble. Okay. I didn't say for y'all to go chasing demons and devils and picking fights with spirits you can't see. Okay. But remember, when Satan got permission, I repeat, when Satan got permission to bring trouble to Job's door, it was so that chapter 42 could make sense to all of us. Job was then considered and given twice the livestock he had, twice what he had when it started. But that's not the truth, because he was given far more than twice. He just got twice the ox, twice the sheep, twice the life of his sons, seeing them raised and lived to the age of his previous sons and daughters. That was 10 of them. And then 3 of those daughters he had, they were more fine than the finer daughters he had, the fine daughters he had then. And watch this. People were then told, all the people of the region, after he got double for his ox, double for his camels, double for his workmanship, his men, his herds, he got double for all of that. But then Yahweh told everybody in the region, because this man lived through, I'm gonna wait till my change come. Oh my God, my soul rejoices. He says, I'm gonna wait for my change to come. I got boils on my body. Okay, I still got to keep living. My wife, like, seems like she lost her mind. I still got to keep living. My son and my daughter are gone. My children are gone. 10 sons, 10 children who, when they would have feasts and they forgot to sacrifice, I would sacrifice on their behalf. That's love. I got to keep living. Yahweh gave me everything I had that made me comfortable. And Yahweh has the right to take it. So this storm came to blow out my norm, to give me super on my natural. And when we start looking at troubles that way, Yahweh can manifest that final resolve, that intended place with expediency. So Job, he lived through. He even lived through his friends who he trusted to know him. He lived through their negative assumptions about him. He lived through it. He didn't shoot him. He didn't kill him. He didn't cut him. He didn't pull out his sword. He didn't pull out his dagger. He just listened to these jokers talking like, wow. He lived through his troubled times. And in the end, they had to come back and they had to give him a piece of gold. Everybody in the region who called him crazy, and everybody in the region who said he must have displeased God, everybody in the region, his wife, everything that was near to him and dear to him was gone. And all he did was say, I got to keep living because Yahweh didn't tell me to die. He took my children. It must have been their time. My wife she's wherever she's at in her head. I can't even do with that. He lived through his troubled times. Think about it, y'all. He lived through everything at once. He had transitioned of 10 children. And he might as well have had transition of his wife because she lost her complete mind. She told him to curse the reason we were blessed and living in luxury and die. I'm just not seeing her still being there when all this took place, when it was over. And then, watch this. Not only that, is he dealing with 10 children dead. I don't wish that on anybody. Not one child of a parent. I just don't think a parent should see a child demised. The pain of it is just, regardless of what we say when we give Yahweh thanks and we know that it is ordered in the heavens, it's still a ripping from our souls and our hearts. But what he does is he lives through his trouble. Not only that, compound that by losing servants that were born in his house as if they were his bloodline. An empire he built over decades, ripped away by acts of God, fires, by robbers, acts of men, marauders, and then by his own staff dividing up his stuff because they felt he was too weak to defend. So he went bankrupt while he lost his children, lost his wife. And I really got to think, low key, he lost his friends. But he lived through all that trouble. Come on, y'all. Talk to me. Talk to me.
Okay.
He kept living. He kept living. He lived through it all. Boils and sores on his skin. I'm sure he had to think about what his wife says. You should curse your God and die. But Yahweh gave. And Yahweh has the right to take away. Yahweh, whatever this trouble is you sent my way, I'm going. Listen to what he says. He says, I'm going to wait until my change, until my metamorphosis, until this cocoon is off of me. The storm of life hit him. and blew out all of his normalcy, all of his comfort space, all of his convenience, only so Yahweh could blow in greater. He got double for the natural things he raised and reared. So that means all of those servants that died in those fires, all those servants that died in that robbery, all those servants that left because they were whatever afraid and didn't make it, all of that took place, Yahweh gave him all of that back. That means the relationships that were at that same level, and then gave him back 10 children to where he could live long enough to see his 10 children exist at the same age his prior children lived at, and then his 3 daughters, which were also a dowry, because at that time you get a dowry for a beautiful daughter, right? And they were even more beautiful than the first daughters, and the first daughters was fine. These was glory. And so he now has been given double of every natural thing he lost. But what does Yahweh do? He gives him back whatever the multiplication is for the sheep, the ox, the goats, the rams, the turtle doves, whatever it was that he lost in flock. And then Yahweh said, because you were faithful, listen, because you were faithful, I'm going to have everybody in the region you have been bartering with and thought you were bankrupt. I'm going to have every one of them and your friends who low-key did what they did. Every one of them are going to bring you gold, a piece of gold, every person. So y'all, he didn't get double for his trouble. He possessed the double. And then Yahweh added real money on top. Real money. See, they didn't have those little cute earrings. You heard them say, oh, they'll bring earrings. Well, back then, the earrings wasn't those little cute loops that we wore in the 80s and in the 90s. And some of y'all think you got on right now that are dangling from your ears, that lightweight stuff. They didn't have that lightweight, air-filled tinsel that we wear as gold and think we got something deep. They had real smiths making gold. They may have added additives to it, but they're armbands. When a man brought you a bracelet, he brought you a bracelet that was usually as thick as a watch band today. Not these little cute bracelets we got. The cuffs that the women wear, it would be more like that. And most of those cuffs that women wear are cosmetic. They would bring cuffs that would go around the forearm, cuffs that would go around the bicep. But David ended up on the throne. Job, he ended up with more than double, way more than double what he had in the beginning, because both of them lived through their troubled times. Troubled times vet you out and flesh you out, and troubled times shows what's really inside of you. Trust me when I tell you, trust me. Let the things that happened to David and the things that happened to Job and the things that happened to Yeshua happen to a sphere you're involved in. You'll see what's in that person right then and there. You'll see it. They'll keep the religious front up for a minute, but when they can't eat, you will see what they'll sell and what they'll give up, their soul, their integrity, their body. I said it. I mean it. I know what I'm talking about. I got case studies in my office to this day, and they keep coming in. When troubles hit, people who don't understand that troubles are just as much a part of life as living in the good is, remember Zion, and all things give Yahweh thanks. And live through your troubles. Don't stop pushing towards the mark that you said was the vision Yahweh gave you. And usually if you're in him rightly, you'll know that one thing he wants you to do primarily is be the best image of him in the earth you can be. That's where you start with pushing towards the mark. Make it that you're trying to make heaven your home. Filter everything you think you should do, every scheme you come up with in your mind, every option you have to reply or respond or engage or attack or defend yourself. Filter them through the word. Live through your difficult times. Live through your trouble. Live through the transitioning of a loved one. Live to the breaking down and the malfunctioning of something that is essential to you getting back and forth to work or keeping you comfortable in your home, or live through the difficulty of your children having disability. Live through the discomfort of you or loved one, a wife or a friend having a psychological break that doesn't seem to have an end in sight. Live through people damaging your credibility and your integrity, making stories up about you because of one little truth that you may have self-inflicted yourself with. And then you'll see all these other stories begin to flame up around it, and people believe it. Your friends low-key believe and begin to judge you. You got to keep living, keep your head held high. I am so grateful for a woman by the name of Barbara June Jones Mosley. And my cover, Apostle T.R. Malone, and people that I endear, who reminded me, R.W. Shambach, keep your head high. You messed up, you keep moving. You don't understand what's going on, you keep persevering, and you ask Yahweh to open your eyes while he's having the winds of storm and winds of trouble blow things and debris in your way. Yahweh, is this debris or is this a tool? Did you unearth something, or are you removing this from me? Am I to use this and draw it nigh to me? Or am I to let you push it into the waters and the sea, and like the chaff, let it drive away in the wind you're blowing? Show me. Keep living in your troubles. Keep going to work. Keep your Sabbath. Keep serving. It's okay to mourn. Mourn with your heart. But don't stop living because you're in some pain. If you left the gym after doing a very intense workout, you don't not go to work the next day when your body and your muscles are saying, ah! You reach for maybe some ibuprofen, and that's not good to do if you're trying to build muscle, but it will at least disjoint the discomfort or disconnect you from the discomfort to some degree. You keep moving. You still got to bathe. You still got to cook. You still got to drive. You still got to go to work. You still got to go to church. You still got to pick up your children from daycare. Every time you get out that car, you're like, oh, you feel like you're about 102 years old. Live through your troubled times, because we were taught that when you get when you go through troubled times, sometimes you need to be alone, just be by yourself. That's not what the Bible says, but that's what our world says, and that may be even what our church and our religion says, but that's not what Elohim says. He says, in all things give thanks. 6 days shall man work. The seventh day you rest. That's the day you pull aside. Now that's a whole other conversation for another day, but the principle is more than adaptable. So if anybody, we're going to take 15 minutes. Somebody keep me timed. And if you guys anything you want to share, take away, or add, I will give references to our pastors on platform first. Pastor D, of course, Mama D, you've earned the right as well. Pastor Spencer, Pastor Michael, those of you who we do know and are where they are, all of you are able-bodied ministers. We want to make sure that we let you know that it's a chance. Pastor Michael, if you're here, don't see you, but I know I see you somewhere. I can feel your presence somewhere. I know you're around here. A major daughter, Pastor Esther. So if you got anything you want to share, what did you take away from this today? Or what would you like to say, hey, I can also see this because it made me reflect on this part? Don't tell your testimony, as it were, for the sake of, putting it out there, but know what you got from what it made you reflect on. All right. Anybody? Moderators, keep watch, keep cue. And moderators, if it's you, you can speak too. All right. But when you do, just come off your microphones and say your name. And then when we hear your name in that sequencing, we will be able to put you in the queue and make sure you get your space and time until we tell the hand rising to be turned off. Facebook, to write it in, and we'll be with you. I like what you wrote, Michelle Grice. Michelle says, yes, it is a time of reflection. Maybe sometime we'll get the chance to hear that, Michelle Grice. See, Mystique says, yes, there are blessings unimaginable on the other side of the storm.
I'll call you back.
All right.
Okay.
What do we have?
Pastor Dion here.
Pastor Dion, and moderators, please pay attention to those who come off a microphone wanting to be heard, and make sure I get that cue. Pastor Dion, you got 30 seconds. And if we need more, we'll give it to you, but go.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I really love this conversation, because oftentimes we always think that we are being afflicted by the devil. So it's,
You went into the matrix on that, because I want everybody to hear what you said. You said that many times people think, no, you're fine. Pastor Dion, you're fine. I just know you cut out for a second. I want everybody to hear it. Many people, everybody seems to think that we are afflicted by the devil, and we give him too much credit, and then we fear him in such a way that we act bad, bold, and brazen against him, and we find ourselves ruminating over, oh, the devil is chasing me. Well, listen, the devil can't do anything to you he has not gotten permission from Yahweh to do. Really think about that. Go ahead, Pastor Dion.
And this is the time in my own personal practice and experiences that when I do see trouble coming to my life, when the storm comes, two things I ask Yahweh. And the first one is, show me the truth, reveal to me the truth about the situation, and also show me what I need to learn from the situation. Good. So I'm glad you're taking that away from. Oftentimes, this is a time in which I have somewhere in my consciousness separated myself or was seeking outside of myself. And so God has to bring the storm in order to bring me back.
It's funny. It's a good take, because it's funny. I can I tell you the truth? I'm a sing a song, but I'll tell you why I stopped singing a song, right? If you can use anything, Lord, you can use me. Y'all remember that song? Touch my heart, Lord, and my feet. Take my hands, Lord, and speak through me. If you can use anything, Lord, you can use me. Well, to use you, that means you're going to be used to move stuff out the way. And many instances, you're asking God to use you. And though you mean that from your heart, I would recommend you let him choose when he wants to do it. You stop telling him. But yeah, because usually we have, and I said that in a humorous way, and some may not get that. So please know it's okay if you do or you don't. But oftentimes we fail to realize that when you've been given, to whom much has been given. So if you've been studying, and especially for those of you, my dear Pastor Mike, bringing up this point now, they're in a 21-day fast, right? If you've been fasting and getting and gleaning from his word, understand, once you get that information you've been given, to whom much has been given, much will be required. And that can come off as discomforting and or trouble appearing times, but you've been given everything you need to get through what you are now qualified to deal with. Great point. Great takeaway, Pastor Dion. Anyone else?
You have a cue, Apostle.
Thank you, beloved. Real quick, y'all, I need you to pick that tone up. Y'all sound drugged down. I can't be drugged down today. Come on.
I'm sorry. It was.
I want to hear something like, you got a cue, Apostle. I like, you got a cue. No, miss me. Yeah, thank you. Give me some life. The devil. Come on.
We see Pastor Mike, Stacy, and then Elder Faison.
Pastor Mike, always a pleasure, my dear brother. You and that wonderful wife of yours, Pastor Samantha. If you guys are not following anybody with real good faith besides some of us on this platform, please make sure you are following him and his wife. They are some very enlightening. I love listening to them, sharing with them, and fellowshipping, collaborating. So, Pastor Mike, what's good, my dear brother?
Hey, Apostle, has been wonderful. I'm going to pick up where you left off. You know, when you're asking God to do something in your life, you have to expect that he's going to do something in you first. And one thing I learned, that he tries and tests the hearts of his servants. You mentioned Job. That is a life lesson that we all need to, his case study. We need to follow that. We need to understand it. And, I'm not sure if you heard the double portion, the double blessing. Though the double is great to receive, you have to go through that process. And it's that process that you spoke to today of understanding that once you pass through the fire, once you go through the crushing, that's the only place that you can really gather the oil that God has poured out. And so I'm excited about this. I appreciate you and I appreciate this platform. God bless.
Man, I appreciate you so very much. And like he talked about, I really didn't have time to talk more about it, but the crushing, when the olives are brought to that threshing floor, when they're brought to that crucible to be crushed, you can't get the oil that we all deem so valuable until you actually crush and squeeze out the first form of that oil. But see, what we've been taught to do as of late and as of recent is to see and say that storms we need to fret, storms we need to fear, storms we need to deal with in a different way than Yahweh first ever intended. But if you can ever pay attention to what was said, you will see clearly when the rain or the storm has gone. Another song we sang within Christendom, song says, Jesus, Jesus. It's like the fragrance after the rain. His name, they would say, that's what the song would say. His name was like the fragrance after the rain. The rain always comes. The storm always comes to clean out. If you do anything with meteorology and understand what goes on with the science of that, you will know that storms come to push out things. If you don't get right amount of storms in your life, you get stuck with things such as El Niños. If you get an El Nino, that's a very unhealthy scenario because you have germs just sitting around, lingering in your atmosphere. You can become, the atmosphere and the people in the atmosphere can become sick because viruses thrive in those mediocre warm temperatures. Either you got to have something hot to kill them out or something cold to kill them out. But if you don't have storms that bring in those nor'easters, if you don't have storms that bring in those hurricanes, strong winds, driving rain, hot heat to push out and get things moving, the earth has to breathe. The earth has to live. And we live in a similar cycle in the human life. All right. Anyone else? Great ad, Pastor Michael. I appreciate you, and Pastor Dion. Great ad as well. Anyone else?
Yes, you have, I saw Elder Barbara Faison and then Mama D, and you're about 10 minutes into your 15.
Thank you, Elder Faison. Shalom Aleichem to you today.
Greetings, Apostle, everyone on the stage and everyone in the room. Thank you for allowing.
I lost you, Elder Faison.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Oh, I got you now. What you got?
Okay, great. I'm reminded of Romans 8:28. It says, and we know that God, through God, things together for our good to those who love him and who are the called according to his purpose. So whatever your purpose is, I just believe that your trials are going to be greater, because that's when the breaking comes. When the breaking comes is when you find out just how much God has planned to entrust in you. And I thank you for this topic today, because as we go through troubled times, sometimes we think that, why are we going through this? We're not supposed to have troubled times because we are the call. But that is what's going to make you go through and be what God has called you to be. And I thank you again today for allowing me to speak. And I bless everyone that you continue and not faint. We shall walk and not faint. Amen.
I love that, and it is the truth. I'm gonna you just quicken something in me, what we talked about, but just to remind, because I wanted to remind us of that earlier. We talked about the analogy of working out. Why do you go to a gym? You know,
work it out.
Yeah, we go to a gym we want to tone up, we want to look better. Some of us actually go because we want to be healthy. Most jokers go to the gym so they can look sexy. I'm just putting it out there. Y'all can front all y'all want to, but you know, and so it's like looking good is what we want more than being healthy, right? So like being healthy is a byproduct of the fact that we look in the mirror and say, I got a gut. I want to get the gut gone. Don't realize that the gym and proper eating will make you healthy. So it's like a secondary thing. We reverse it. Probably if we did gym work and workouts and took serious our health, we would look better. That would be the byproduct, right? But I really think most that I talk to have it in reverse, because I always ask people, why do you go to the gym? I want to look better. Very few start with, I want to be healthy. Right? Most start with, I got this gut, I got this weight, I got this, you know, it's like, that's your reason for going, right? And so the health becomes a byproduct. But here's the catch. We go to the gym because we have a purpose, right? But we know in the gym that we are going to exhaust our muscles. We are going to fast, as it were, from certain types of things, whether it be beverages and just consume water, or beverages that are more cold pressed juices as opposed to sweeteners with sugar and those other synthetic forms of sweetening. And so we have a purpose. We're called. We're calling ourselves. We're calling the gym and saying, we're calling our personal trainers and saying, hey, help me get to this goal. And then we allow them, watch this, to trouble us. But we don't complain at that troubling. Ooh. But then when we are saying to Yahweh, after he says, I have a plan for you, we go quoting Jeremiah 29:11. Yahweh, he says he knows his plans concerning me, plans of good and not of evil, plans to give me an expected end. Then we pray and cry the Jabez prayer, Lord, enlarge my territories, right? Lord, oh, bless me indeed. Well, dear heart, we got to get you in the gym, the spiritual gym, the faith gym. And we don't realize it, because we just assume we can pray and God was going to drop it like a bag of heaven, a bag of gold or a bag of blessings out of heaven and put it at our doorstep. No, you got to work through. Watch this. Faith without working it out is death. It's a pot belly. It's cellulite. It's fog in your brain. It's high cholesterol. It's high blood pressure. Oh, that's so good. Faith without works is dead. And we know all things. But when he says in Romans 8:28, when he says, and we know all things work together, you got to read chapter 7 to chapter 8, verse 27 to understand why he says, and because of this, we now know all things work together for our good to them that love Elohim and who are called and do what his word says to do according to his purpose. Great ad. Thank you, Elder Faison. That's why I love wisdom on the platform. But this is what I want. Psalms 9 through 10. We've already given credit to the webpage. I don't agree with everything on the page, but this listing was very, very, very good. And like I said, I had 8 of these passages. They added 2 more, made 10. So Psalms 9 through 10, see Mystique, prepare to start putting it up. Yahweh is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Those who know your name, Yahweh, trust in you, for you have never forsaken those who seek you. The next passage is Philippians 4:9 and 19. Philippians 4:19. It says, my Elohim will meet all your need according to his riches and glory by Yeshua HaMashiach. That was one they added. This is one of mine. Psalms. The next one is Psalms 32:7 through 8. Psalms 32:7 through 8. And it reads, you are my hiding place. You will protect me from trouble. Surround me with the songs of deliverance. There you go, Mama D. I will instruct you and teach you in the way that you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you. Again, that was Psalms 32, 7 through 8. The next one, number 4, should be 1 Peter 5 and 7. Casting, 1 Peter 5 and 7. Casting all your anxieties on Elohim because he cares for you. All right, the 5th one should be Romans 8:18. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. Number 6 will be 1 Peter 1, 6 through 7. In this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, which is more precious than gold that perishes, though it's tested by fire, you may be found to result in the praise, the glory, and the honor at the revelation of Yeshua HaMashiach. Number 7 should be Joshua 1 and 9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Be not affrighted. And do not be dismayed. For Yahweh your Elohim is with you everywhere you go. Number 8 should be Mark 9 and 23. Mark 9:23. That's number 8. And it should read, and Yeshua said to them, if you can believe, all things are possible for those who believe. The next one, number 9, is Romans 8:28, as we've had read earlier by, I think it was Elder Faison. And we know that for those who love Elohim, all things work together for good, to those who are called according to his purpose. And the 10th one should be Ecclesiastes, or the book of Kohelet, which you know as Ecclesiastes, chapter number 7 and verse number 10. Say not, why were the former days better than these days? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. I'm going to repeat that because that settles in real good. That's one of my favorites of the entire list. Ecclesiastes 7:10. Say not, why were the former days better than these days? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. So Zion, as this particular platform gives us, it says, getting through a difficult time isn't always easy, but Elohim has given us his word to make sure we understand his promises, which are yea and amen. Whether your difficult times last a few hours or a few days, we hope that you find comfort in these verses. My name is Apostle V.W. Jones. This is the Proceeding Word, and the page I'm reading from right now for these 10 passages, again, is Heart and Soul Homeschooling.com /10 Bible verses to help you through difficult times. I love you to life eternal. I love you enough to tell you the truth, and I pray that this truth correlates with the truth of his word in your life. Let us pray out. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine upon you all and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift his countenance upon you and grant all of you all 13 attributes of his shalom. This we pray in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope that this message has been a blessing to your very life and your soul, and more importantly, your walk with the King. Well, we have come to the end. I hope that you would consider becoming either a partner with us in ministry, or if you're not already a kingdom citizen, consider becoming one. By doing that, you can sow into this ministry so that we are able to continue to teach this type of ministry at a grand scale. Join us on all of our social media platforms and visit our webpage to make your contributions sure. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Shalom Aleichem.